All right, so we're diving into a case today that is really going to make you think. It all starts in Aurora, Colorado, back in 2005. We're talking like a regular neighborhood, nothing out of the ordinary. A reclusive Navy veteran, Richard Johnson, is living there with his mother.
Okay.
But hiding in his backyard is a secret. And that secret would shock the whole community. And it leads to this twisted tale of murder, mystery, and this whole pursuit of justice.
It's so interesting how, when you hear about cases like this, it's always these seemingly ordinary places where these extraordinary events happen. It's a reminder that, even in the most mundane places, crazy stuff can go down.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what happens here. So Johnson's out cleaning his patio one day, right? Just like a normal chore, right?
Yeah.
And he stumbles upon this, big sealed Tupperware container.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly what you expect to find just chilling in your backyard.
Right.
No, not at all. And, the container itself is pretty bizarre. It kind of makes you think about, the level of planning, the deliberate attempt to conceal something. It's not just, tossing something in the trash. There's thought behind this.
Exactly. It's why a Tupperware container? And it gets worse. The smell coming from it was definitely not your average leftovers.
Oh, no.
So Johnson, he's curious, right? Who wouldn't be? He opens the container and finds a human body inside.
Oh, my God.
It's a horrific discovery. He calls 911 immediately, obviously. And when the police get there, it's like a scene straight out of a crime novel.
I can only imagine. And the body, you said it was decomposed, right?
So badly, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really difficult to identify. The police figured it had been there for quite a while.
That's what's so crazy. How could something like that go unnoticed for so long?
It really is. And eventually, they do identify the victim. It's Carolyn Jansen, a mother of 6 who had been missing for 2 years. She was working 2 jobs, trying to make ends meet, even selling Avon on the side. She was clearly trying to turn her life around.
That's so heartbreaking. She was trying to build a better life for herself and her family. It's really sad to think about what her kids must have gone through.
It really is. And to make matters worse, the investigation, they find out her death wasn't an accident. It was murder.
Oh.
Blunt force trauma to the head. And remember that Tupperware container? It was sealed with industrial duct tape. It was clearly like a planned and violent attack.
Wow, so it wasn't random. Someone specifically targeted her and went to great lengths to cover it up. It's chilling. And since the container was on Johnson's property, he immediately becomes a suspect, right?
Right. It's the most logical starting point.
Yeah.
But then Johnson does something really unexpected. He tells the police he knows who actually did it. A man named JD Harrington.
So he's pointing the finger at someone else.
Exactly. And get this. Johnson and Harrington had both lived with Carolyn at different times.
Really?
And all 3 of them worked together at the same Waffle House. Talk about a crazy coincidence.
It's almost too strange to be true. It makes you question, what's the real story here? Is Johnson telling the truth, or is he trying to throw the police off his trail?
Right, because the police, they start looking into Johnson, and they find some things that are, let's just say they're pretty disturbing. They searched his house and found hidden cameras in his bathroom. Turns out he was secretly filming women without them knowing.
That is so creepy.
I know, right? It definitely raises red flags about Johnson. But, as unsettling as that is, it doesn't automatically make him a murderer.
No, of course not. You have to separate the weird from the actually criminal. It's a tough situation for the police, right? They have this body on Johnson's property. They find out he's got this secret. But he insists that Harrington is the real killer. He even says that he helped Harrington move some boxes from Harrington's old apartment, including that Tupperware container.
Yeah, and that, if true, puts Harrington directly at the scene with the victim. But can they trust Johnson? Is he manipulating them, or is he genuinely trying to help? It's a tangled web, that's for sure.
They need more to go on than just his word.
Definitely. And as they dug deeper into Harrington's past, they find out he's got a history of criminal activity, like theft and forgery.
Not a good look.
Not at all. And they find out from Carolyn's coworkers that she and Harrington had argued about money before she disappeared.
So there's a potential motive there. Financial disputes can definitely escalate.
Right. But remember, it's still all circumstantial. They don't have any eyewitnesses, no confession, and DNA technology wasn't as advanced back then as it is now.
That makes it tricky for sure. They can't rely solely on Johnson's word either, especially with the whole hidden camera situation.
So the DA's office is hesitant to move forward without more concrete evidence. They don't want to risk convicting the wrong person. The case goes cold for a while. And Carolyn's family and the lead detective, Detective Connor, they're left with more questions than answers.
I bet that was frustrating. To be so close but not have enough to make an arrest. It happens a lot with cold cases, though, right? You think you have your guy, but you just can't prove it.
Yeah, exactly. But Detective Connor, he refuses to give up. He's convinced Harrington is responsible. He keeps digging, hoping for a break in the case.
It's amazing when you hear about these detectives who dedicate years, sometimes decades, to solving a case.
Absolutely. And in this case, that dedication paid off. A few years later, in 2012, a new DA takes office. This new DA, John Kellner, he's all about revisiting cold cases. He agrees to take a fresh look at Carolyn's case.
Oh, that's great.
But he has one condition. He wants to use new DNA technology that wasn't available in 2005. He wants to re-examine that duct tape on the Tupperware container.
Ah, so the advances in forensic science might finally give them the evidence they need.
Exactly. And when the results come back, they get a partial match to Harrington's DNA.
A partial match. How strong was it?
A 30% probability.
So not a perfect match, but still significant.
Yeah, definitely not enough to convict on its own, but combined with everything else, it starts to paint a clearer picture.
It corroborates the other evidence, right?
Yeah.
And gives the DA more confidence to move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finally, after years of waiting, Harrington is arrested and charged with Carolyn's murder.
Wow. What a breakthrough. It's a huge win for Detective Connor and for Carolyn's family. But it's not over yet, right? It's just the beginning.
Yeah. They still got to prove it in court. And 30% DNA match, that's not exactly a slam dunk.
Right.
Especially with Johnson, the hidden cameras and all. And then there's the whole question of motive. Like, why would Harrington even do this?
Right. The defense attorney is going to have a field day with this. They're going to go after Johnson's credibility and try to poke holes in the whole case. It's going to be a tough one to win.
It sounds like it. So how did the prosecution even plan to, convince the jury that Harrington was guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt, with all these, weird details and characters?
Well, they had to tell a good story, right? A story that connected all the dots, the DNA, the circumstances, Johnson's testimony, and they had to do it in a way that made sense, without getting bogged down in all the weirdness.
So, what actually happened during the trial? What convinced the jury?
Well, the trial took a few unexpected turns. It wasn't just about the evidence. It was about the stories people told, the impressions they made, the prosecution. They laid everything out really carefully, the timeline, Harrington's lies, all the evidence pointing at him.
Okay.
But you want to know what really got the jury's attention?
What's that?
Richard Johnson's testimony.
Really? This guy with the hidden cameras?
I know, right? But he was a surprisingly good witness. He spoke calmly, honestly. He admitted his faults. He stuck to his story, didn't try to hide anything.
Interesting. So, the defense's plan to make Johnson look bad, it kind of backfired.
It seems that way. By trying to discredit him, make him seem unreliable, they might have actually made him more relatable to the jury. They saw him as a flawed person, sure, but someone who was telling the truth.
Wow. So what about Harrington? Did he stick to his story?
He tried to. He said Carolyn stole his rent money and ran off.
Right.
But there was one problem with that.
Oh.
Carolyn never picked up her last paycheck.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Why would she leave money behind if she was running off? Especially if she was struggling.
Yeah, exactly. It just didn't add up. And his timeline, it was all over the place. He couldn't really explain why Carolyn would just disappear like that.
So you have Johnson's testimony, which is consistent, pointing at Harrington. And Harrington's alibi is falling apart. What did the jury do?
They deliberated for 2 days.
Oh, wow.
And in the end, they found JD Harrington guilty of second-degree murder.
Wow. So after all those years, Carolyn's family finally got justice.
Yeah.
Did they ever figure out why he did it, though? What was his motive?
That's the thing. No one really knows for sure. The podcast doesn't give a clear answer. Detective Connor, he thinks maybe it was a fight that got out of hand, Maybe drugs or alcohol were involved. But there's no real proof of that.
Man, it's just... It's sad to think that something like that, like a moment of anger, could lead to something so awful.
Yeah.
But at least Harrington was held responsible. So, thinking about this whole case, what does it tell us?
Well, for me, it shows how complicated the justice system can be. You have circumstantial evidence, witness testimony, advances in technology, and all these things come together to solve a crime, even years later. It's amazing, really.
It is.
Yeah.
And Detective Connor never giving up, that's inspiring.
It really is. And, it also shows how we can misjudge people. Johnson, with the hidden cameras, he seemed like a bad guy at first. But when he testified, he seemed honest, It makes you realize that things aren't always what they seem.
Yeah, that's true. It shows how important it is to, like, look beyond the surface and really question what we think we know.
Exactly. Truth can be hard to find. Even in cases that seem simple, there can be so much going on beneath the surface. It's about peeling back those layers and examining everything carefully.
This whole case is just nuts. A body in Tupperware, hidden cameras, Waffle House, and then the DNA finally, cracking the case after all those years. It's like, what else is out there? What other secrets are hiding right under our noses?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how much do we really know about the people around us? In this case, it's a reminder, like you said, that truth can be way stranger than fiction.
For sure. And it shows how important it is to keep fighting for justice, even when it seems impossible. Detective Connor never gave up, and look what happened.
Yeah, his persistence really paid off. And, Carolyn's daughter, Victoria, she's amazing. She never stopped pushing for answers, for justice for her mom.
Right. She never let her mom be forgotten. It's a really inspiring story.
Yeah.
So what can we take away from all this? From this whole deep dive into Carolyn's case?
Well, I think it challenges us to, to really look deeper. Don't just take things at face value. Like Johnson, he seemed suspicious, but maybe there was more to him than met the eye.
And you never know what's hiding in those ordinary places, right?
Yeah.
Like behind closed doors in plain sight.
Exactly. And even when things seem dark, even after all these years, the truth can come out. Justice can prevail.
Carolyn's case shows that. It's never too late.
Yeah.
So, to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep digging for those hidden stories. Because they're out there. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.